What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you like catchy music? Because if you like catchy music, you're going to love our next guest. Welcome to the show, James Clark. James, how are you doing today?
I am just swell. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. Welcome to the show. Thank you for giving us some time. So now, can you tell us a little bit about the new album that's come out, Next Best Thing?
Well, actually, the album is called The Color of Happy.
My bad on that one. Sorry about that.
Okay. The latest single from it is called Next Best Thing. Yeah. So The Color of Happy, 10 songs written by me, 10 songs written by me and produced by Mr. Mo Berg, who people will know best from The Pursuit of Happiness, which was a great Canadian power pop band in the 80s, early 90s. And I was always a big fan of Mo's, actually, in the band. And yeah, so he produced the record, and it was done. Luckily, we did the majority of it before the lockdowns started, so we were in good shape there. But it did affect us a little bit. The making of it, we had to postpone for 6 months, I guess, just to get back in and do our last session. But yeah, so it was just we released it on May 7th, a couple weeks ago, and the reviews are great so far. So I am the color of happy.
I do have to ask, because you did mention that the pandemic obviously affected the recording schedule. I have to ask, how has this been? Like this past year has been, for lack of a better term, horrific as far as, putting a pause on the lives of musicians, as far as, playing shows and kind of getting out there. So how have you been through all of this?
I go through phases. During the first lockdown, I was totally lost. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I had no ambition to even or inspiration to even write. I was totally lost. So spent my time really just first of all taking a lot of long walks, and then I rediscovered doing some artwork, which I really love doing. And then things sort of came around. We thought like things were going to get better. And then, the second lockdown came about and was back in the same position. So it's pretty frustrating, but I have had some moments of inspiration and be able to write off and on, not like I usually can, but it's there. But yeah, overall, it's just a frustrating time for sure. Now, I really miss the live shows. And with a new record, normally you'd be out promoting it with live shows and doing a big launch for it, a big party for it. And, that's missing this time. So.
And we mentioned that the Next Best Thing is that, the first single off of the album. And in watching the video, it very much felt like a music video of the times. So was that almost cathartic and kind of putting that out there and putting almost in visuals kind of what musicians have gone through in this past year?
It was cathartic, actually, very much so. And that was actually Sean Ryan who directed the video. That was his concept. We actually had a totally different concept to begin with. But as the lockdown continued, we realized, okay, we can't really have anybody else involved in this. It's just the two of us. And so Sean came up with this new theme to use the pandemic, actually, and just as an inspiration for the video, and give the concept that I am totally isolated here, and going out, as if you've seen the video, towards the end of the video, I'm actually out and I'm playing guitar outside, totally alone, but outside. And we just considered that would be the next best thing to actually being able to play a show or play with other people.
Now, by the way, if you're watching this podcast right now on YouTube, take a look down in the description. We're going to put the link for James's new video there.
Thanks.
So be sure to, once you're done watching this whole interview, go and check that one out, because one of the things I actually really enjoyed about the video, and there's this scene in it where you're just sitting there in front of a massive shelf of vinyl, sitting down with the headphones. I had flashbacks to kind of, almost when I was a kid, I'd be that kid who would sit in the chair,
me too,
buy the record player with the headphones on. First of all, is that all your vinyl? Like, is that your collection?
No, most of that is Sean's. We actually shot that scene in Sean's apartment. So the majority of that is Sean's, but I did take over some of my own choice selections for the video. Most of them you would see sprawled on the floor or standing up against the shelving. Most of that's my stuff there. Yeah. So it was a combination.
Now, it's one of the things when you are sitting and listening, do you prefer to listen to an album on vinyl, or are you fine with just like, all right, give it to me in streaming or give it to me on CD?
I really prefer the vinyl, and it might be because I'm really old, but no, I've always preferred vinyl. I mean, I've got a huge CD collection as well, and I don't download a lot of stuff. I've only really begun doing that, but mostly with friends music, just to support them. But I would prefer listening to vinyl anytime.
And one of the other things in the video too, because you mentioned your artwork, is you're working on one of your, as you like to call it, your Clartoons. And if anyone's ever been to the to your website, there is some phenomenal artwork in the Clartoon section.
Oh, thanks.
Where, I mean, obviously you can kind of see where the impetus comes, but where did the inspiration to do that line of almost music or album art inspired art come from?
It's strange. I was during the lockdown, like I said, I sort of reignited my love for doing cartoons or Clartoons, and so one day, just driving around, I was listening to Tom Petty, and I thought it was a song from his Damn the Torpedoes album, and I was just thinking about it. I was thinking about the album cover. I thought, well, yeah, Tom Petty's, that's the guy I've always wanted to actually Clartoon. So and it just came to me like, oh, I should really just try to redo the album cover and see what happens. And I think the title came to me, Damn the Mosquitoes, came to me, and I thought, okay, let's do this. And it came out pretty well, and I got a lot of good feedback from it. And I thought, well, maybe I should just continue to do a series here, because I've got a lot of time to draw. So yeah, I continued the series, and I think last summer, I think there was 12 or 13 in a row that I did in a pretty short amount of time.
Have you ever thought about taking, the Clartoons, your artwork, and putting together like almost a coffee table art book, to display? Because I mean, there really is. I mean, personally, going through the selection, I think the Gilligan Dark Side of the Lagoon might have been my favorite one there.
Okay.
But it's what, do you ever see yourself putting out
yes,
a full hardcover collection of these?
It's funny you mentioned that, because a good friend of mine suggested that when I started doing these. He said, you got to do a coffee table book. And I thought, okay, that's a great idea. And that was actually something that I guess I am still working towards, but I've slowed down now because I'm promoting the new album. But that is something that's definitely in the back of my head, something I'm working on for sure. Yeah.
Now, there's an old saying, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'm going to do it anyways. In that every kid is, born an artist, and the challenge is to stay an artist when you hit adulthood. You have pretty much embodied that with the music and with the Clartoons, all that. So what is it that drives you to keep, living art as life? Well,
I'm too dumb to stop now. That's pretty much it. I mean, I've been doing it all my life, and it's who I am. It's who I am. I mean, I've tried to quit many times over the years. Just thinking, I've had enough of this. I'm just banging my head against the wall. That's it. I'm done. But it doesn't last for very long. It's the itch comes back, and before I know it, I'm writing again, or I'm playing another show. I've tried to stop, but I can't. So that's pretty much the answer. I can't stop.
Obviously, with the writing, the recording, and the shows, there are parts of the music life that are really fun, and there's parts where it's like, oh dear God, I have to talk to another guy on a podcast like me. But what is it about like the album cycle process that you find the most invigorating, and what part do you just wish there's a skip button?
I suppose writing is the most enjoyable part of it for me. That's number one. but it is a lot of fun to go into a studio and record the songs and just, build them up and see what and hear what the end product is. That's always a great feeling if it comes out as a good song. If it doesn't, well, I'll just waste a lot of money. But no. I mean, I love both of those aspects of the whole thing. And then going out and playing the shows to promote it, it's three different hats that I wear. In fact, once the album is done, then they say that the hardest work comes after that, promoting it. But I'm having a lot of fun doing that too this time around. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
With the prolonged, it's going to be a while before, at least up here in Canada, it's going to be a while before venues can really start to bring back, or at least justify bringing back bands in, because there's going to be, capacity limits. There's going to be like, you can only have so much. And, there's a fear that we're going to be losing some of the venues that have been hosting live.
Yeah, it's true.
And, one of the worries is that how can we make sure that we don't lose any venues because of this? And, do you see this as maybe a turning point for how venues can, maybe hopefully, maybe get some grants from the government in order to be able to bring the musicians back out?
Oh, definitely. I think the city should be supporting the venues more than they do. I mean, yeah, if there are grants available, then these clubs should be going for it for sure. Toronto is always hear that Toronto is a music city. I'm not sure if it is. I'm sure at one point it was. I wouldn't call it that now, but I would love to see the city come around and say, yeah, we are a music city, and here's some money for you guys. Let's make sure you guys are able to come through this. I mean, there's already been a lot of venues that have already closed over the last year or so because of this, and it's really sad. So, the question in my mind and a lot of musicians' mind is there going to be a place to play once we are allowed to play again? And that's wrong, totally wrong.
Now let's go to early James Clark, because getting back to that sitting in front of the vinyl with the headphones on. Do you remember some of those early albums that really inspired you as a kid? Obviously we all listen to stuff that maybe our parents listened to, but do you remember some of those early albums that really grabbed you?
Sure. I mean, I had an older brother who got me into music pretty much in the first place. So through him, he was about 4 years older than I was, and so through him, I was listening to some pretty cool stuff. I thought I was a big fan of the Who. I didn't know a lot of 10-year-old kids who were Who fans when I was 10, and so through my brother, I got to hear that stuff. I got to hear a lot of Bob Dylan music that I didn't know any other kids my age listening to Bob Dylan. People like that. In fact, there's a Bob Dylan song called I Want You, which is on the Blonde on Blonde album. And I originally heard that through, actually, my parents belonged to the Columbia Music Club. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
13 cassettes for a penny. I am very familiar with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think my mother belonged to it. So every month there'd be a new record arrive. And so I first heard this Bob Dylan song called I Want You on this compilation from Columbia Records. It's called the Best of 66, I think. And it was just filled with lame, horrible, middle of the road music. But track 6, the last song on side 1, was Bob Dylan doing I Want You. And this thing just stuck out, like a sore thumb on this record. I thought, wow, what is this? What is this? And that song, I still remember vividly, just really inspiring me to start writing. And it was still to this day, it's one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. It was incredible, the effect it had on me, that song.
I'm still trying to picture like how someone put Bob Dylan on like on a Columbia sampler. It's like oh, we got all these bands, and yeah, throw some Bob Dylan in there.
Yeah, it was totally out of place on this song. Yeah.
We'll see if we can get this by everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Let's stick this on here. Yeah,
there's always an interesting thing too about the first album that you go out and buy with your own money. I mean, we all get albums for like Christmas or birthdays, but to actually save up your own money from whatever part-time job or allowance that you get, and to go out and buy that first album. Do you remember that moment?
I don't remember the exact first album. I know what it could be. There's one or two. I know it was most likely a Monkees album. Growing up, I was a huge Monkees fan, and when I was growing up, they were already passé and split up. Their TV show was still on the reruns, but you could go to any record shop and pick them up in the delete bin for 99 cents or less sometimes. And so I was grabbing up all these old Monkees albums for $1. And my father would take my brother and I down to Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street, and we go up to the third floor, which is just full of deletes, and on a Sunday afternoon, and we would just grab all of these albums for 99 cents. So I picked up my whole Monkees catalog down there for $10. So yeah, so it would have been a Monkees album for sure.
Now I have to ask, since you did you watch the Monkees TV show?
Oh yeah, all the time. In fact, I'm not ashamed to say I have them on DVD, which I bought many years ago, and occasionally I'll be on YouTube now, and it'll come up in my feed and say, oh yeah, I've got 20 minutes here. I'm going to watch this episode. Yeah. They were a huge influence on me.
I think it's one of the things where people who don't know don't really realize how fun those shows were, and it brought the fun to the music as well. And and that's also part of that music, the visuals to music vibe that you get a lot when it comes to actually doing that for yourself, and doing music videos. Is that the kind of hope that the visuals that you and the director add to the song that you write brings that kind of joy for people watching it?
Definitely, I really hope so. Yeah. When we're shooting a video, I always have that in mind, or something. Either it be a Monkees episode or a Beatles movie. When we were shooting the next best thing video, and I had to do, we're out in the field, and I had to do a bunch of jumping around and somersaults, things like that. And so my inspiration for that was, the Beatles' Hard Day's Night, when they're out on the giant field during what's playing on that. I think it's Can't Buy Me Love. It's playing in that section. And so that was inspiration for me to jump around and act goofy. Yeah.
So in the recording process for the new album, you mentioned, of course, that Mo Berg is the producer, and we've had Robin Black on the show before talk about Mo as a producer. So how comfortable was it to have someone like that, working the knobs and helping piece the album together?
Well, this was the second album that Mo's done for me. He produced most of the last album, and so when we were working on the last album, first in the studio together, it was kind of very surreal for me, because as I mentioned earlier that I was a fan of Mo's back in the 80s and 90s, and I went to see the band Pursuit of Happiness before they had a record deal even, and I thought, wow, these guys are really onto something. So I was a huge fan. So actually, I have him in the studio producing my record. It was a little bit unnerving at first, actually, but so on the new album, I mean, I knew at this point how Mo worked, and I knew that he was a genuine guy and totally pro. And I thought, there's no better man for this job. He understands where I'm coming from musically. So so I called him back to do this record, and it was great. Yeah, I love working with him, and I hope we get to do it again.
So getting back to to young James here. So when it came to the first time picking up the guitar, or actually first time putting a band together and starting to write songs, kind of work us through the James Clark music journey.
Wow, it's a long journey. My first instrument was drums. I played drums for a long time, and I still do. But I played drums in many bands for many years. but I was always somewhat of a closet songwriter. It took me a long time. I was writing lyrics as a kid. I didn't play guitar at all. I tried many times. I would pick it up. My fingers would kill me. I would put it down again and pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. And eventually, around in my mid 20s, I picked it up and didn't put it down. And so I began writing songs immediately. I think I skipped sort of an important part of songwriting, which was learning how to play other people's songs first. So I sort of bypassed that whole section and just went directly to my own songs. And so I started doing that and tried to put a band together. It's very hard to put a band together at times, especially when people know you as a drummer. But I stuck with it. And I've had many incarnations of the James Clark Institute over the years. There's been countless number of people in this band. On my birthday about 5-6 years ago, it was a surprise party for me, and all these ex-members of the band showed up. So I had a group photo of the band, and there's about, I don't know, 25 people in this photo that I've played with in the past in the band. It was pretty phenomenal.
As pieces, come in and out of the band and all that, do you feel that it changes, almost like the feel of the songs as they're being played live? And, how does it take some time to get used to new members and new sounds in that live environment?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But it's always, it might be different, but it's always good. It's always as good as the last incarnation. It just sounds a little different. But the guys I'm playing with right now, unfortunately, none of these people played on the new album. Dean, my drummer, actually does some backup vocals on it, but the other guys aren't playing on the record. So, but they're, we were actually rehearsing last night, and it sounds very, very true to the album. It's gonna sound a little different because, like I said, none of these guys played on the album, but we're keeping it pretty true to the record.
How has the rehearsal process been through all of this? Obviously, here in Ontario, we're coming down from the third wave, but there's still questions, there's still numbers, there's still some unease. So how has it been now getting into the rehearsal phase of it before hopefully we getting to play shows?
Well, we take precautions. We're in the space. It's a fairly large space, and we each keep 6 feet apart from each other. And the other guys wear masks. I've tried singing with a mask on. I can't do it. So I'm situated behind a giant piece of plexiglass, which seems to work out really well. And it's unusual to be performing like that, but or rehearsing like that. But you have to do whatever you have to do to keep it going.
Do you think that as shows start to come back, there's going to be that need to have that plexiglass barrier, between the crowd and the band? Obviously, you're not going to put every crowd member, in their own little glass case of emotion, but there's probably going to be some kind of barrier. And do you feel that's going to affect that early, back to live concert experience?
That's a very good question. I don't know how much of that it will affect. It's definitely going to be there for sure. I did a show last summer. It was a solo show. It was during the summer when the numbers were down and things were looking, better. And I did a solo show encased in plexiglass, as if it was in a shower. I felt like I was singing in a shower, and nobody was in the room. But there was a large screen TV on the back patio, and so the back patio was filled with people, and they were watching me from on this large TV, and I had a little monitor myself so I could see them. It was very bizarre, but it was a fantastic show. Like, even back then, people were just so hungry for live music.
That's gonna feel like the James Clark live via satellite.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But it was a great show. It was one of the best shows I played in a long, long time. People were just so enthusiastic. So I think there's going to be some of that too. I think people are just going to be so hungry for this again.
there's also been the proliferation of live streaming a lot of shows, and you see the venues. I know down in the States there's a company called Veeps, and they've been putting on a bunch of live shows, and now they're outfitting venues with live stream equipment so they can hopefully maybe get some more cash in for for the bar and for the band
Right.
by doing it live stream. Do you feel that's going to become more the norm, and that local shows are going to be live streamed, and that's going to actually open up an audience for more musicians?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Yeah. I mean, I think, live shows are going to come back for sure. But I think the online streaming is going to stick around. I think it's here for good, actually.
And obviously, with this past year, it's forced almost every industry to almost advance their technology and the way they do things, probably about 10 years earlier than we probably should. So in all of it, how did it technically affect the things that you do as far as writing, recording, etc.?
Technology. It's affected. I haven't really used the technology to its capabilities. I'm just kind of stuck in my old ways. But the technology's there, and I'm just not really set up here at home. I mean, I would love to be able to set up and record, and then send this track to my bass player and say, here's the track, and put a part down. And I'm just not set up to do that, and that's unfortunate. But I look forward to the day when I can do that, which hopefully isn't too far away. But yeah, I love to take advantage of what's out there for sure.
So when someone sits down and listens to the new album front to back, what kind of takeaway are you hoping that they take from this?
I hope, as I'm telling people who have bought the record or the CD, I hope it brings you 35 minutes of absolute happiness. I hope they can forget what's ever happening in their world for these 35 minutes and just walk away and think, wow, that was a great 35 minutes. I had a great compliment from a guy who bought the record, and just a stranger who bought the record, but he reached out to me and said, thank you very, very much. My father passed away last week. We went to the funeral. I came home from the funeral. I put your record on, and he totally forgot about his father passing. I mean, what higher compliment can you have than that? My music has helped him to just go somewhere else for 35 minutes or so and forget about everything. And that's some pretty heavy stuff.
Through the pandemic, we have seen a lot of artists put out a lot of music, and some of it's really angry because obviously they're feeling maybe isolated or alone or just fed up through all of this. And you were seeing a lot more introspection as well. Do you feel that with your album that it's almost coming in at the right time when people want to be uplifted? People want a smile. People don't want to start thinking about the isolation still.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, I think it was the right time to release this record for sure. I mean, I don't think of this album as a total uplifting album. I mean, there's a little bit of darkness on there myself because that's just how I write sometimes. But for the most part, it's a finger snapping, toe tapping record, and I think it's a good time for it. I've heard that from people.
So now, James, we get to the point where it's time to talk about you. And we're going to do it in our, made you a mixtape type way. So I have to ask you, James, if you were to introduce yourself to a total stranger by, not by telling them who you are, but by handing them a mixtape. And on that mixtape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape, and why are those songs there?
Okay. This is a bit of a task because there's a gazillion songs I could probably put on this mixtape. How many songs are you looking for on this mixtape?
As many as you want.
Really? How long is this tape? Is it like a standard 50-minute tape, or
we'll go one side of a 45.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, I would kind of try to go chronologically, I guess, and start with a song that one of the first songs I ever remember hearing. It was probably the first album that was ever bought for me by my parents, It was the soundtrack to Walt Disney's Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. And I listened to this album over and over and over again as a kid. And one of my favorite songs on that record was a song called Little Black Rain Cloud. And in fact, I played that song a few years ago. I would open my shows with this song, just a solo rendition of Little Black Rain Cloud. And it's hard to put into words just how strong I feel about this song. Actually, it's whenever I do hear it from, I don't listen to it anymore on a regular basis. But when I do hear it, it brings back so many memories. Like, yeah, okay, well, maybe this is where the music thing started for me. Yeah. That's and then from there I would go. I'm going chronologically. The second song would be the Beatles' "She Loves You." That's the first rock and roll song that I ever remember hearing. I was very, very young, and I remember it was wintertime, and my father and my brother and I were going somewhere in my dad's car, and we were backing out of the driveway, and the radio was on, and "She Loves You" came on the radio. And whoa, what is this? This is incredible. So that's, that is the first rock and roll song I ever remember hearing. That's big for me. Another big one would be "Don't Be Cruel," Elvis Presley. Specifically the 78, scratchy 78 version, which my father owned, and he owned a lot of 78s. And that one, my brother and I would just play over and over again. So that's still big in my heart. And actually, kind of a funny story is when my brother and I were first learning to play music, and he played guitar, and he had talked me into playing drums, and we'd be in the basement. We had all kinds of basement bands, but our first band, I had this makeshift drum kit, but I didn't have any cymbals, and so my brother said, "Oh, let's use Dad's 78s as the cymbals." And yeah, I think you know where this is going. So 78s, people don't know, are just very, very brittle and could break so easily. And so, one strong hit of a drumstick will just send it to smithereens. And so we destroyed my father's 78 collection. And I tell you, when he found out about that, that was the end of our band for a while.
But still, somehow you're here to talk to me today through all of that.
Yeah. Well, it was my brother's idea, right? So him being older, he got the worst part of it than I did. But yeah, so that memory is very strong. What else would be on there? There'd be 3 songs from the Who's Quadrophenia album. I've often said I got Quadrophenia for Christmas when I was about 13, and my parents had just split up, and I was living with my mother and my sister in an apartment. They sold the house, so we had to move away, and it was a big downer. It was a very depressing time for a few years, but I got Quadrophenia for Christmas, and I say, this is probably very, very overly dramatic, but I say that Quadrophenia saved my life, because there's something about that album that just spoke to me. The songwriting just spoke to me. It was incredible. So the 3 songs for that album, I would have to say The Real Me, I'm One, and Love Reign Over Me. Those 3 songs just absolutely spoke to me, what I was going through at the time. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. What else? I got a list here of songs. Waterloo Sunset, the Kinks, Waterloo Sunset. I consider that to be, that's my favorite pop song of all time, Waterloo Sunset. I think it's one of the best songwriters or songwriting. It's one of the best songs ever written by one of the best songwriters. Ray Davis is a huge influence on me. So that one's definitely on the mixtape for sure. Yeah. What else would there be? Well, there'd have to be some Monkey songs in there, for sure. Pleasant Valley Sunday, for sure. I think that's a great tune. Carole King wrote that tune. Absolutely wonderful. Great vocal by Mickey Dolenz on that. And I Want You by Bob Dylan. I already mentioned that earlier. It's one of the earlier songs that really influenced me as a songwriter. So, yeah. The list could go on and on. I could put another Beatles song on there. I mean, I could probably fill the tape up with, how many Beatles songs, but there's one which was the B-side of the Let It Be single, which the song was never on an album. It was called You Know My Name, Look Up My Number. And it was it was a comedy record, pretty much what it was, a musical comedy record. And I consider that to be my favorite Beatles song in many, many ways. It's just absolutely, I think it's just genius what they did. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I do have to ask, because you mentioned earlier that, getting to the point of becoming, a working musician, you kind of skip the part of, learning to play other people's songs. But I do have to ask, if ever tasked or ever asked to record a cover of a song, which one would you choose?
Very good question. I have recorded some covers. I recorded a Warren Zevon song 10 years ago, maybe, to submit it for a Warren Zevon tribute album, which didn't make the cut, but I did release it on a CD single back around 10 years ago or so. A song called Splendid Isolation. So I have recorded some, but I think what I'm thinking about back in my head is recording maybe a 5 or 6 song EP of all Petula Clark songs. I'm not sure if you remember her or not, but
I do.
Downtown, and there's 5 or 6 songs that I just love that she did. Don't Sleep in the Subway, and I Know a Place, and Sign of the Times. I would just love to take my band in the studio and record these songs.
Well, here's when you get that chance, and I cannot wait for you to be able to get back out there and playing live, and for things to open up. So, James, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find your website, and how can we get our hands on the new album?
Okay. The website is clarkinstitute.com, and you can order the album, CD or vinyl, the sexy black vinyl version. You can order that through the website. Very, very easy. And I'm on all the digital platforms. I'm streaming everywhere. I'm on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere currently. And what were the other questions?
No, I think you got to cover that. Yeah, that's how we get the album. That's how we fucking do. And James, thank you so much for coming on to the show and talking to us today. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Major Mixtape podcast. If you're listening to us on an audio streaming service, you can pop on over to YouTube, watch this whole interview, and don't forget to look down at the description and find the link of James's new single. But if you are watching this on YouTube, hi, you can actually download the whole album, or download the whole interview on all the audio streaming services and listen to it on the go. Until next time, this is the Major Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. James, thank you so much. We will see you all next time.